In this video, I'll be showing you how to work with Git aliases, and I'll also explain a bit about what's going on underneath the hood to make all of this happen. But before that, why would we even want to use Git aliases in the first place? So the whole point of Git aliases is to help us to save time. It can shorten a very long command into just a few letters, and it can also help you to remember the options that you need for certain commands to run. Sometimes you're not sure whether it's only one of these options, or is it two, or is it all of them. That's where Git aliases can come in handy. And the last use case is when you want to chain commands together. For example, if you do Git aliases, you can pipe it in to grep so you can find particular aliases that you're looking for. So I'll be assuming that you already have Git installed. If you don't, you can go ahead and go to the git-sem.com and go to the downloads page. And you can go ahead and download Git for your operating system. Once you've installed Git on your computer, you'll see that Git actually comes with a tool called git config, and we'll take a look at some examples of how to use these commands later. But for now, I'm going to try to walk through the documentation with you. So it says these configuration variables can be stored in 3 different places, and so these are actually files that you can actually find on your file system if you go and look. But a much easier way would be to use the git config command and append the -- system option for this particular file, or the -- global, or the -- local option. Why does Git need 3 different places to store these variables? Well, it's because it's going to give you more control around how you can customize Git's behavior to your preferences. And at the bottom, you can actually see there's a hierarchy for these 3 sets of configuration. So values in .git/config, which is your local configurations, will trump those in /etc git config, which is the system configurations. So whatever that is local, more specific to your Git repo, is going to be prioritized by Git when it's looking for your configuration settings. So it might look a bit cryptic reading all this, so I'm just going to summarize this into this over here. So to access your local configurations, just do git config -l to list the configurations and --local to specify where you would like to get the configurations from. So if I go to my terminal and do git config -l to list and --local, you can see that these are my local configuration settings. If I do git config -l and --global, you see these configurations that are going to apply to all the repos that I have. And lastly, we can take a look at the system configurations, and there's going to be a whole lot more. And if we look at the output, we'll see that there's actually a number of aliases that are already set on my computer. One interesting alias I would like to point out is the alias itself. So the command alias is actually an alias in itself. And to take a look at that, we will do git alias. And this is going to get us the configurations, but only the aliases that are being set. So as I mentioned before, Git aliases are very useful to help you to take note of the options that you need to use, as well as chaining commands, piping it into grep, into set, and so on. So let's just take a look at some of these preset aliases and how we could use them in our Git workflow. The first one that I would normally use is git status or git s. And the second one I would normally use now is the git acm, which will add all the untracked changes, commit them with a message. But you realize if I do git acm, nothing happens, and that's because commit -m requires you to pass in a message value. So the proper way would be to say, type in a message, and now you can commit. But since we have no changes, let me just create a new file here. And if I do git s, we'll see that we have a untracked file. Now we can do git a to add all the untracked changes, and cm for commit -m. Pass in the message, and there we have a commit. And now we can go ahead and push these changes. So for the more experienced Git users, this is probably going to be a time saver for you, saving you keystrokes. But if you're still quite new to Git, I would recommend you to actually type out the full commands rather than using aliases right from the start, because this is going to help you to understand what's actually going on underneath the hood. That said, however, you can use these aliases as like a mnemonic to help you to remember what you are supposed to type actually. If you're like me and you always get confused between the order of the adding and the committing and the pushing, then just remembering the ACM mnemonic is going to help you to recall all these commands much better. So add followed by cm to commit with a message. One last alias I would like to show. If we go back to git alias, we have the L, we have the LG, LL, and LLG. All of these are going to help us to do the log commands, but the one that I prefer would be LLG. And this is going to give you the log in a very nicely formatted way rather than the standard git log. And if you don't like the colors, you can always change them by editing these colors right here. So really super useful, and if you really like more customization, you can actually set your own aliases, and we will take a look at how to do that in just a moment. So far we have taken a look at some examples of git aliases shortening our commands and saving us a lot of time and effort to remember these commands. Here's just a comparison of how things might change after you start using git aliases. Of course, this isn't the fastest way, but it's still an improvement. If you would really like to automate things much further, then you might probably have to take a look at writing your own bash scripts to automate this process. But for now, let's take a look at setting our own aliases. Let's say the preset ones weren't enough for us. So to set an alias for your current local repository, then you will need to specify the -- local flag. So perhaps this will be more useful if you're trying to test out an alias. But typically you will want your alias to apply to all your repos. So normally I would use the -- global option and followed by alias dot the name of your alias and then the actual command that you want it to substitute. So let's take a look at an example of how to set aliases in our terminal. So as usual, we would do git config and then tell Git whether we would like a local or a global alias. Let's try a local alias first. So this alias is only going to apply to this particular repository, and this alias is going to be called L for log, D for decorate, and O for one-liner. So this is going to be log. Once you're done, click enter and nothing seems to happen, but you've just set your first alias. So as we've seen before, we can actually do a git config -L and go for the local, and we'll see that we have set the LDO alias, which means we can now do git LDO and we will see a very nicely formatted log. But just to show what I mean by a local alias, if I open up a new project and if I do git LDO, in this case it doesn't work because the alias was only set for the other repo here. So to fix this, instead of --local, we will do git config --global and call our alias the same name, LDO, and type. Click enter. Now we have set the alias to apply to all repositories. If I go back to the other repository and do git LDO, now this works. So hopefully this made sense to you. If you do have any questions or you're confused about what is actually going on or how this is all working, do leave a comment down below and I'll try my best to answer them. The aliases that I've shown you so far are going to be a great start, but if you're interested in finding out more and you want to explore, I'll be putting a few links in the description below for you to find out more. Now one last thing I would like to show you, which I think is really important, is how to unset your aliases. Because you might be exploring a lot with your aliases, and if you find out that you don't want a particular alias anymore, then the way to do that is to append this --unset option to your git config command, and that's going to work. So to undo this alias that I've set, I would do git config --global because it is a global alias, and I do --unset and tell Git which alias I would like to unset. So I'm going to unset the alias.LDO alias. Click enter, and now if I try to run git LDO in this repository, it does work because I've set LDO as the local alias. But if I go back to this other repository and I try git LDO again, now we'll see that we're back to the same error. So that's all I have for this video. If you do have any questions or thoughts, do leave them in the comments section below. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thanks for watching.